Hi, welcome to 3 things that will make your car last longer, probably. Now, I'm not making a claim that these will make any car last to over 300,000 miles or 482,700 kilometers before needing something major like an engine rebuild or a new transmission. That's more something I put in the thumbnail to make it look more appealing. These things here will make your car last longer than it would otherwise though. Unfortunately, in saying that, there's nothing we can do to make cars last longer if they were shipped from the factory. So if you do everything on this list and your car still blows up after X amount of Ks, don't get angry at me. Get angry at the manufacturer or something. I don't know. Anyway, enough blabbering. Let's start with number 1, which is warming up your car. Now, straight away, there's a misconception here. It seems like a lot of people hear warm up your car and they think, oh, so I have to idle it from a cold start for 20 minutes. No, that can actually have the opposite effect. Here's what I mean. First of all, this is specific to fuel-injected engines, especially more modern cars. Older fuel-injected engines, and especially carbureted engines, are a different process. At least carbureted cars definitely are. Anyway, when you start it from dead cold, that is, when the engine has been off for a few hours or it's been sitting overnight, you want to leave it idling, not touching the throttle for about 15 to 30 seconds, depending on how cold it is. If it's below like 15 degrees Celsius, then wait 30 seconds. And if it's below 5 or 0 degrees Celsius, I'd wait probably about 45 seconds or a minute. For those who don't use Celsius, 15 degrees is 288.15 Kelvin. Hope that helps. Anyways, what you're doing is letting the oil circulate, and more importantly, letting the internal metal parts of the engine expand from heat energy. Once this period of time ends, you can drive. However, only use a little bit of the throttle pedal, say less than a quarter if you can, and only rev to about 2,500 RPM for the first couple of minutes of driving. This does depend on the engine, but for basically any petrol engine, 2,500 RPM is what you want to stay below. After driving for a few minutes, you can bump that up to 3,000 for another 5 minutes or so, at which point your coolant gauge should read operating temperature. However, the car is still not fully up to operating temperature. It's not fully warm because the coolant warms up a lot faster than the oil, and the oil is much more important because it lubricates all the moving bits inside your engine. Generally, the oil takes another 5 to 10 minutes to warm up after your coolant. Once you've been driving for about 10 to 15 minutes, you can start to use more throttle and more RPM. I'd say by 15 minutes of driving, it's safe to assume the oil is warm if you can't read the temperature. As an aside, if your car has a screen in the gauge cluster, you might be able to configure it to read the oil temperature, so check your owner's manual and see if you can. Then, though, you do have to know what the operating temperature of your oil is for your engine, but you know, it's very useful information to have. Otherwise, you basically just have to guess and assume that it's up to temperature, and for all you know, it might not be. Now, I know that you might think if it's close to operating temperature, like maybe 15 or 20 degrees away, it's probably okay. But the thing is, no matter what, oil will always do the best possible job at lubricating all the moving parts in your engine when it is fully up to its operating temperature. And honestly, at least to me, I just don't really feel like it's worth the risk. All it really takes is an extra 5 minutes of driving. Let's say you get to 10 minutes and you're still not sure if it's warm, just drive it for another 5 minutes before you really start pushing it. In this time of driving it to warm up the engine, you're also allowing the transmission and other related parts to warm up. Once they are, you can rev the engine as much as you want, all the way up to redline if you feel like it. And you may be inclined to because of number 2, using all of your car. Now, I'm not saying to redline your car all the time. I'm just saying every now and then, maybe once a week, or more frequently if you have like a performance-y, sporty engine, just rev it out to within 1,000 RPM or 500 RPM of your redline, or just to redline. For example, you can do this on a freeway on-ramp or something similar. Technically, there shouldn't be much wrong with doing it every time you drive your car, as long as everything's up to temperature, but do keep in mind it's a lot of extra friction for the internal engine components to handle, at least compared to normal driving. Now, engines are designed to use all that RPM, that's what the redline is, it's the maximum safe RPM for the engine to use, but more sporting engines are definitely going to be able to last longer with that sort of use. They're going to be able to put up with that sort of thing a lot better, because that's kind of what they're designed to do. No matter the engine, doing this does have a lot of benefits, like cleaning the carbon deposits off of the intake valves and off the tops of the pistons, as well as activating and making sure the engine's variable valve timing solenoids are working, which a lot of modern cars have. Basically, basically most of them use oil pressure to switch the cam to a different one which allows for more power at higher RPM, and sometimes if you just don't use it for a long time they can gum up with oil and gunk and stuff like that. And so if you use it every now and then, it makes sure that oil is flowing through it correctly and that they're working as they should be. I'm not going to lie here, there are probably some downsides to doing this. I just simply can't think of them, aside from the increased friction, like I mentioned. But at the end of the day, the engine is designed to be used at that RPM, so to do it every now and again is definitely not going to hurt it. And like I've just explained, there are absolutely benefits to doing so. Just a quick note, for turbocharged cars you always want to let the car idle for a couple of minutes after some hard driving. This allows oil to pass through the turbocharger and cool it down. On the other hand, naturally aspirated cars, and I think supercharged cars as well, I'm not sure, they don't have to worry about that. Again though, I'm not 100% sure about supercharged cars. Naturally aspirated I know is fine, but I'm not sure about supercharged. Anyway, we finally move on to number 3, the boring one, and the one you probably don't want to hear, maintenance. To put it simply, take care of your car and it will take care of you. Yes, it's expensive, I get that, but it's the price you pay to make your car last. Oil changes are the bare minimum. All the other fluids and filters plus spark plugs are pretty much the standard. And then the mechanics, or you if you work on your own car, can then look at all the other systems and everything, like check for leaks and stuff like that, while they're in there doing the actual maintenance. Now when it comes to actually listening to mechanics on what they say is wrong with your car, if they happen to find something while they're doing a service, that is a whole other story. The bottom line is, follow the manufacturer's guide for maintenance. It says to do spark plugs every 60,000 kilometers, that's when you do them. Simple as that. Again, I understand it can be expensive, but it's much less expensive than having a car blow up on you. In that case, not only are you out money-wise, but you also don't have a car, obviously. That's not really that great. Unfortunately though, the manufacturer is in some cases completely high on coke with some of the shit they say. Like, oh, you don't have to change your coolant, it's good for the lifetime of the car. Or the automatic transmission fluid is good for the lifetime of the transmission. What the fuck is the lifetime of the car? For that sort of thing, I'd just say speak to a trusted mechanic or car-minded friend, because no matter what the car, the fluids will always need to be changed eventually. I guess the manufacturer just assumes the car isn't going to last more than 150,000 kilometers, or something like that. Point is, keep it by the book, mostly, and find a mechanic you can trust. That will unfortunately be hard, so your best bet is to not only look at online reviews, but also try and find one of those YouTube videos where the people bring in a car that they know what is wrong with it, and they like test the mechanics to make sure they're honest. Other than that, I'm not really sure. I can't imagine how hard it must be for someone who just doesn't know stuff about cars. And I mean, maybe that means you will benefit from learning things about cars. Put it simply, take care of your car and it will take care of you. Now, just one quick honorable mention, using the button on the handbrake. There seems to be a misconception that not using the button on the handbrake doesn't cause any damage because it's a ratcheting mechanism that's designed to do that. And while that is true, it absolutely does cause damage, or at least premature wear. When you pull the handbrake without the button, the pawl scrapes against the teeth of the ratchet. You might think this is alright because it's the same principle behind, a ratcheting socket wrench, but the difference is the pawl on the handbrake is under a lot more tension to make sure that the rear brakes actually stay applied when you pull the handbrake. So, point is, it definitely does cause wear. My Norno has this lovely 1988 Alfa Romeo GT V6 Grand Prix edition, and the handbrake in that car is pretty sketchy. Even when it's fully engaged, you can push it down without needing to press the button. Very safe. It does this because not using the button removes a tiny little bit of material from the ratchet as the pawl goes up the teeth. Now obviously this is after like 40 or so years of him doing that. It's an old car that I'm using as an example, but the video is about making your car last, so I decided to put it here. It is as an honorable mention though, because, it's for one specific system and not the whole car, so yeah, but again, I felt like it was worth mentioning. To be fair, most modern cars have electronic parking brakes anyway, so you don't really have to worry about this. I'm not saying that's a better system, don't get the wrong idea. And there you have it, how to make your car last. Thanks very much for watching. I did say in the last video that I'd make a couple videos before the new year. That's not happening, but here is one video, and one is close to 2, so I think I fulfilled my promise. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one. Happy New Year, and bye-bye.